Welcome to Identity Unboxed, where we provide mentorship and promote representation for Black professionals in the advancement of the Black community.
We are seeking guidance from exceptional Black leaders, scholars, and professionals with expertise in their respective fields.
We hope to foster a space that promotes authenticity, inclusivity, and restoration for our listeners while exploring the intersection of our personal and professional lives.
This project is a culmination of our lived experiences as young Black professionals to transform our life trajectories to overcome adversity and reach triumph.
Our intention is to inspire you on your path to discovering your purpose.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into our Black History Month episode. We are super excited to highlight outstanding Black individuals this month in an effort to honor our ancestors and the legacies of those that came before us and those that are with us now. We are honored to be highlighting Terry Metcalf today. Terry Metcalf is currently the Dean of Education at Rise Up Academy. He's a former professional football player. He played for the St. Louis Cardinals, the Toronto Argonauts, the Washington Redskins, and he's a 3-time Pro Bowler. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Terry.
Oh, thank you, Brad, very much. Glad to be here.
Thank you. And we can jump right into our first question. So you played in the NFL for 6 seasons, 5 with the St. Louis Cardinals and 1 with the Washington Redskins. Can you tell us about your journey to becoming a professional athlete and describe how this informed how you carved your career path?
Well, it started long ago when I was about 9 years old. I had 2 older friends that I kind of watched them playing football, and they were ripping and running up and down the field. And I said I wanted to do that. And so that's what got me interested in the game. Unlike children of today, I wasn't thinking about professional football. I was just thinking about making it to the varsity team in high school, let alone going to college and anything like that. But that's what got me interested. And I started playing and started doing pretty good. So as I got into high school, I started doing really well, and I was all state and all that good stuff. But I still hadn't had the professional appetite yet because I was a little guy. I was only like 145 pounds in high school. And then I went on to college down at Long Beach State in California, and I was an All-American, led the nation in rushing and scoring, and still wasn't sure I was able to play at the professional level because of my size, because that was a knock on me that I heard from a lot of scouts. But I was drafted in 1973 by the St. Louis Cardinals. Fortunately, the coach that became the head coach of St. Louis, I played against him at San Diego State, and I beat him both years. And so that's why he drafted me. And when I went to talk to them, the first thing the general manager asked was, "Can you play defense?" And me, I just wanted to play. So I said, "Yeah, I can play defense." But then Don Coryell, who was the coach, said, "No, he's going to be my running back." And that just gave me a large amount of encouragement that I could still do it. So that's what I wanted to do. And then even as I started playing, I wasn't sure because that's my first year. I said, I want to be a wide receiver because I wasn't getting the ball much, and you get hit a lot being a running back. But I carved my way out because I had a coach in high school that said you could see me on Sundays. But in high school, I wasn't even thinking about professional football, and I didn't get that concept until later on. But I carved my way because I played football, ran track, and I had work ethics that were extremely high. Because I wanted to be the best, so I worked out to be the best. And that was a carving of my way into football. And then when I got drafted, my work ethics got even stronger because I wanted to be the best. I was little, and I didn't want to get hit much. I wanted to outrun everybody, and so I worked harder just to do that.
That's great. It sounds like football was really a significant part of your life and informed your character. And I was really interested to hear a bit more about how your time playing sports has informed how you've approached not only your career, but just your life in general, if you'd be willing to elaborate a little bit.
Sure. Well, even as Dean of Education, as kindergarten teacher, I use those same principles with my children to be the best, to try hard, to work hard, and understanding that there's going to be mistakes made, but you got to keep working through it. And the key is working through it. And if you keep working at it, you will become successful. And, a lot of children come in kindergarten not knowing, not understanding, not believing in themselves. And it's my job, just like a coach, is to help that individual be what they can be and be all that they can be. So sports played a big part in my discipline, my structure, and also being a coach, because when you're on a football field, you got to be a player's coach. When you're on the field, you want to be exactly like the coach would think and do. And so that's what I train my students to do at this time, is I want them to not need me at the end of the year. I want them to be able to do it on their own and be successful, be secure in what they're doing, and know what they're doing.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it sounds like you're really emphasizing the importance of empowering those kids that you work with and others in your career to really charge forward towards their goals. So that's great to hear. And then moving forward, your outstanding playmaking ability has set records, including the most games with over 250 all-purpose yards, and becoming the first player in NFL history to average at least 30 yards per kick return and 10 yards per punt return in the same season. What contributed most to your success, and how did you develop that level of consistency in your athletic performance? I know you mentioned your work ethic and how your discipline has been a big part of that, but if there's anything else that you'd like to share, we'd appreciate it.
Well, a large part of it is also to the people that are around you. You can only be as successful as the people that are around you. They may not get the publicity that I got, but if it had not been for them, I couldn't do the things that I was gifted at doing. So I had people on the special teams, punt return and kickoff return, that would go out of their way to help me get free to run. And sometimes they would just look back at me on a kickoff return and say, "Let's go." And I would take that to mean that we're going to go. We're going to go. I don't know how far we're going to go, but we're going to do everything we can to go. One touchdown in particular, I caught the ball deep in our own territory. The guy that was next to me, not only threw the initial block, getting through the wedge, but he threw the last block that freed me up to go to the end zone. So that's how important it was to have people around you that had the same kind of mentality, that we're going to be successful. We're going to do whatever we can do.
Thank you so much. I definitely could see how that would be important to have folks that are challenging themselves in their own lives to encourage you to continue overcoming adversity and to, push your boundaries. So that is great to hear. And it really is important that the people you surround yourself with are people that are going to hold you accountable as well. I think you kind of spoke to that with the discipline, and just having those people championing you in your life. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, you have to have people, no matter what career you in, that are like-minded. And like you said, have the same aggressiveness to be successful, and the obligation and the commitment to do that, and know that I got to do whatever it takes to get me where I need to go.
On that point, could you share some maybe strategies that you have for cultivating those circles of support, or how you've done that in both football and then now in your professional life?
Well, in football, I tried to be a leader of action, not of words. I would but I would encourage my teammates to work out like I was working out, because when it comes to the game, it's not so much how much better you are, it's how consistent you can play over the entire game. And so I would get teammates to get involved in the off-season workouts that would help us be a better unit, not just a better Terry or a better male, but a better unit, and how that we could count on and depend on each other no matter what the situation was.
Awesome. That's really great to hear. Consistency and keeping a close circle of people who can push you to be your best is very important. So thank you for that. And moving along to our next question, you started your career in the NFL shortly after the peak of the civil rights movement. Can you tell us about your experience as a Black man playing in professional sports in the 70s? I could imagine it was a lot different than today, just given the time frame that you played. So,
Yeah, I look at today on TV, and I'm not there in the locker room, but I see there's more equality amongst players. When I was coming through in the 70s, it wasn't quite that way. I mean, it appeared that way on TV and on the game, but sometimes off the field, it was totally different. There was total separation. Uh, I can give an example, and Brad and I talked about this when we were in Olympia, that we went out to play Denver, the first game of the season, and we went out a week earlier because of the altitude. We thought we'd be out there for a week, and that would help us with the altitude because the altitude would take your wind away real quick. So we flew into Denver, and we drove a chartered bus up to the University of Wyoming, which was a little bit higher. And what was strange, well, we had 12 Black guys on the team at the time, and we had an entire bus plus two other of our teammates, our white teammates, rode on the bus. The rest of the 45-man roster was packed in on another bus, and it was a 3-hour ride. So we didn't think much about it going. And then on the way back, we had to ride the bus back to Saturday, we played on Sunday. It was the same situation. 12 guys, two white guys on an entire bus. The rest of the team, you're talking about the coaches, the equipment managers, the trainers, were all packed in on a bus. And we thought that very strange. That said, we started calling ourselves the Dirty Dozen because we had people come on the bus and see that it was us, predominantly Black, and they would get off the bus and go get on the other bus. And that's when it kind of dawned on me that, yeah, you're my teammate, but you really don't like me. But I didn't let that bother me as far as playing or trying to win or helping my teammates on the field. But it did bring into a realization that just because I can do these things doesn't mean I'm liked. But it kept me encouraged that I got to keep doing what I'm doing because I know God has called me to do this, so I'm going to do this. And regardless whether you like me or not, that has nothing to do with my abilities. And I'm going to keep using my abilities to be the best that I can be.
wow. Thank you so much, Cherry. It's just amazing that you were able to overcome that because even in a non-sports setting at work, a lot of people deal with racism from their colleagues and things of that nature, and it can be really hard for them to show up as their best every day. So the fact that you continue to show up every day, despite all of, that tension, and knowing that people didn't really like you because of the color of your skin, and were judging you is truly a testament to your character. And I was wondering if you ever experienced any similar, judgment or issues when it came to the fans during that time.
Yes, I got called some names from the stands that I won't really repeat here, but I looked at it like this. When you get booed or name called from the fans, you must be doing a pretty good job. You must be pretty good because why would they be so angry at you unless you were doing something? Now, if I wasn't running or scoring, or I was just sitting on the bench, they probably wouldn't say anything to me because I wasn't doing anything. But when I became a threat to their team, then that's when they would get angry and call me name. But like I said, I would use that to empower me to do better and to keep fighting and keep working as hard as I could.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I imagine that's difficult for you to have to put yourself back into that mindset where you were fending off the vitriol from people that were harboring animosity and biases, and people, as Brad was mentioning, still today have similar biases, whether they appear differently in more covert ways than what you experience. But I was hoping you could speak to kind of the cognitive effects of that? I know you mentioned like you had a bit of fuel to continue showing up and to be your best regardless of those remarks. But could you speak to that and kind of just what that impact was for you and any other ways that you were able to manage that?
Well, fortunately, I had a lawyer agent that he was a Jewish guy actually, and actually I even had some blacks say, "Why do you trust this white man?" Well, I had a black agent the first time, and he not only ripped me off, but he ripped some other quality players that he had in his regime. And I said, well, I'm going to be an equal opportunist. I gave a black man a chance. He ripped me off. So why not give this guy a chance? But the bottom line was he was more concerned about me and my future. So he encouraged me to do the best, even though the system was against me. We went into a negotiation. The first time I ever went into a negotiation. And I just wanted to go because I want to experience it. And the general manager started talking about, when a Cadillac leaves the showroom floor, it depreciates. And I guess he thought I wasn't smart enough to understand what he was talking about. And I said, well, I looked over my lawyer and said, I'm going to leave because if I don't leave, I'm going to go across that desk and I'm going to hit that guy. And I don't want to do that because he was trying to compare me to a piece of property, a machine. And like I said to him, I said, well, if you wear your tire out, you can go get a new tire. But if I tear up my knee, I can't go get a new knee. So I left, and that with my lawyer encouraging me and pushing me forward, and it made me feel stronger because I had someone that was in my corner, someone that I didn't think would be in my corner, not that way. Because in that day, they even called him names because I won't use the word. They said the Jew word that represented the ends. And he went against the system. But his thing was, I'm going to get everybody an equal opportunity chance to make a good living, to get the right contracts and things this, that. So he was shunned in the league because he did those kinds of things. So I not only saw it from my perspective, but I saw it from his perspective. And we became friends. As a matter of fact, he passed on, but his family and I are still real close because of that bond that we created, encouraging one another to do the best that we can do.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. That is truly, I just can only, imagine being, a player during that time and then having someone, an ally, actually come to support you. And that's something that we talk about on the podcast a lot is the importance of white allyship, given that they hold, a lot of power in society and
Yes.
especially back then. So can you touch on the importance of like allyship and, white people stepping up to the plate, I guess, even when they can face pushback or adversity?
Well, even in my kindergarten class, I talked to the children about there's good black people, there's bad black people. There's good Asians, there's bad. So the key is you got to find the right people that are like-minded like you, that are trying to be successful. Now, there's going to be some people that don't like you because of the color of your skin, or the length of your hair, the height you are, or the lack of. And so, but you got to know that who you are. And I tell them all the time, if you don't love you, nobody else will. So you got to learn how to love yourself in spite of the circumstances that surround you in society. And society is not necessarily nice. This world is not really nice, but you got to be nice to yourself regardless of what the world does. And don't let the world dictate what you're going to do, who you're going to be, or how you're going to be it. You got to have and a lot of that starts at home. When the parents instill security and strength and constant commitment to being successful, that's when the children become young men and young women and be overcomers.
That's amazing. Thank you, Terry. That truly does speak to the importance of really keeping an open mind and not judging people. Like you said, there is good and bad in everyone. It's important to see the good in everyone, give them a chance and gravitate towards those that want to do good and want to support others. I did have a question, so in the previous question you asked or stated the importance of being around people who push you to do better and be better. And I was wondering, in this case where you were experiencing racism, if there was a sense of like camaraderie among the Black players, and if you did come together, how you guys came together to support one another during these times where you were called names or racial slurs and things of that nature.
Well, yes, it's very important to have people around you that are like-minded and trying to do the same thing that you're doing. I don't know if it was so much openly talked about as it is today. But I had a few really close friends that we kind of talked about these things, and it did put a damper on my mental psyche. It's when I left St. Louis. I left because that was some of the thing. I got booed to death in my last game, and just because of the financial, just because of the whole situation, it kind of put a damper on my mental psyche. And I think it hurt me for a while. I don't think it did hurt me for a while, because when you get to the professional level, growing up as a child, you think the best play regardless, and it's not always true. I've seen Black players get released over less qualified white players. And not to talk about the white player, but I'm just saying, you think the best is going to be on the field, and sometimes that's not always true. So that messes with you mentally, that when is it going to be my turn? When are they going to cut me loose? So when I left St. Louis, I went to Canada, and yeah, I went for a financial reason, but it still left a bad taste in my mouth, because I always wanted to play in the NFL. And I did play in the NFL, and I did well in the NFL, but I think I was pushed out because I was a person that stood up for my rights. I wasn't, I was almost ready to quit the game, because I said, I can go get a job making the money I was making in 1973. I can work at the post office or something like that. But my lawyer, who said, no, we're going to get you what you need. And he worked diligently day and night, and he got me what I wanted, what I needed. And that's what kept me going. But still, in the back of my mind, I felt I was betrayed to a certain extent by the St. Louis Cardinals in particular, because I gave my blood, sweat, and tears for that team. And I'd still be there today if I could physically play, because I didn't want to leave St. Louis, because it was a good team. We had good camaraderie on the team, even with difficult times and differences, but it was a place I wanted to be. And it really hurt me for a while. It hurt me, matter of fact, it hurt me for quite a while. But it was important that I had people around me that encouraged me in spite of the things that happened to me or happened to my friends or my teammates, that we got to keep pushing forward, because, I look back in the slavery days and they had to push forward even still, and we're pushing forward today. And people are trying to hold us back, but they can't hold back what you don't let them hold back. You got to keep fighting. In the office, on the job, on the field, on the court, you still got to push forward, but you got to stay in character, keep your integrity, and things will change.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. There's so much to dive into there. First off, I'm glad to hear that you did have an advocate. And I think, as Brad was alluding to, allyship is an active effort. It's not something that's passive. And people have to relinquish a bit of their privilege when they do step up and advocate for those that are on the fringes of society or disproportionately affected by these systems. And then also you spoke to the point about your community with your other, Black teammates. And I think you mentioned something about how you all discussed it, and that you did feel that you were able to express your emotions and kind of get that validation about your experience. But I'm sure there was a lot of compartmentalization during that time, as you said. But I was hoping to hear a bit more about how people can cultivate allyship. I know you spoke to that story, and Brad kind of asked you about that specifically. But if you have anything else to add about being an active ally, even in the workplace now, outside of your football career, please feel free.
Well, I think the biggest thing, the adversary is not the one you think it is. It's adversary sometimes is the quiet one and kind of passive aggressive. But you got to understand situations, and you got to not let those situations cause you once again to get out of character, and give those that empower the privilege to release you or downgrade you or do what they want to you. You still got to keep your mind focused on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and know that there's going to be obstacles. There's never a place where it's always going to be trouble free. If you think that, then you're in the wrong realm, because there's always going to be people that are trying to get in your way or trying to move you. But you got to understand, they can only move you if you allow them to move you. You have to stay in your place. And I don't mean, a yes man or anything like that, but stay in your place as far as, I know who I am. I know what I'm trying to accomplish. That's going to be in the forefront of my mind. And I'm not going to let someone else or something else dictate where I go or how far I can go. I had a coach in high school that told me I was going to never be nothing because I was too little and I had a bad attitude. I used that as fuel for most of my life. Then one day I had to go speak on his behalf at his celebration. And I was waiting for that moment so I could just blast him. But then when it came time for me to actually speak, I actually thanked him because he gave me fuel to be the best that I could be. And I had to thank him from the bottom of my heart, because if it had not been for him doubting me, or maybe, sometimes you say things to a person because you know they're going to react the right way. And I think he might have been doing that. And it caused me to be better. It caused me, I couldn't do anything about my size, but I could do something about my attitude. Because I tell children and players all the time, you have to be coachable and teachable. When you can be coachable and teachable, you can do anything because you're learning all the time. So I did change my attitude now. I couldn't do a whole bunch about my size. But in that respect, we have to understand there's going to be obstacles. There's going to be hurdles. And you're going to have to be ready to confront those hurdles in a right way, in a positive way, that it doesn't, like I said, once again, take you out of character. It doesn't lose your integrity, and you keep moving forward.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much for explaining that. And also touching on the point that you have ownership over your own journey. And so despite those negative remarks that you heard from folks, you were able to transform that into something that continued to push you forward and lend to your persistence. So thank you.
Thank you.
In moving forward, you spoke about your experience a little bit when you decided to move to Toronto and play with the Argonauts in 1978 in the Canadian Football League for a few seasons. And I was hoping to hear more about how your experience playing in another country influenced how you navigated your life, or if it enhanced your worldview in any way. I know you spoke about some of the racial tension here in the U.S., but if you have more perspective on that, it would be great to hear. And then also your family has a rich football legacy spanning generations. And so would you be able to discuss how that legacy has shaped you and your family both on and off the field? And please let me know if you need me to repeat those questions. I know it's a lot.
Moving to Canada was the initiative move was for financial gain. The team that I played with, the Toronto Argonauts, the organization wasn't very consistent. I had, in 3 years, I had 4 head coaches. In the Canadian Football League, they bring Americans in, you get a 10-day trial, and if you don't make it, you're gone. Now, it's only a 33-man roster. We went through my first year, we went through 140 players, so there was no consistency in teammates. I never had the same offensive line 16 games. I never had the same offensive line for those 16 games. So in that respect, it was very difficult. We weren't winning. I'm used to winning. The city itself, I love Toronto. It was the New York of Canada. Um, it was very culturistic. You could go to a neighborhood, and if there was Italians, they would speak Italian. If it was Africans, they would speak. So the culture diversity was a lot more pleasant at that time than it was here to me. And so I really loved Toronto. I didn't want to leave there either, but I had to go. But that's another story. But I think it helped shape me. My second son was born in Toronto, Canada. He had dual citizenship. Only thing about it, at the time, my wife couldn't go to work because she didn't have a work visa. They don't like that. That's the one thing I did like. They don't like Americans coming in taking jobs from their Canadians unless you got transferred there. But it was it was enjoyable. It was short lived, and then that's when I got picked up by the Washington Redskins. But it did give me a little more experience on worldwide culture and what the cultures are, because in America is American, but then I got to live it. And I knew about Canada because living in Seattle, Washington, Vancouver was a 2-hour drive. So I knew the money difference and all those kind of things. So that wasn't new to me, but you would love it, Deanna, because women in Toronto, they get stuff directly from Europe. So you get clothes that you don't even see in the store. But
that sounds amazing. I need to make a trip up there. I have not been to Vancouver yet, somehow, even though I've lived in Seattle for like 8 years now. But yes.
So yeah, I'll give you a tip though. Once you go there, if you go there, change your money here before you go there. Because if you go to the store and give them $1, you don't get Canadian dollars back or change back. So I learned how to navigate through those things too. And then I was smart enough to know, I knew because of living in Seattle all my life that the dollar difference. So when I went up there to get paid, first thing I asked my lawyer, where am I getting paid in? Canadian dollar or American dollar? And I said, I'm getting paid in whichever is the highest. So, because a lot of them, even though they're Americans, they still get paid in Canadian money. So, and I had a former player that I coached in high school. He's actually still up there coaching for the BC Lions. He's a defensive coordinator. He played there 13 years, and now he's a coach. So it's a good experience. I think it's another avenue for football players that really want to play. And just because it's the CFL, it may not be the NFL, but you know what? They've been in existence as long as the NFL, if not longer.
That's great. You are definitely smart to make sure the conversion was in your favor. So, but yeah, thank you so much for talking about that experience. And it's interesting to hear that you do recommend folks that are interested in playing in another league, that's a potential option for them to experience something different outside of the US, but also to maybe get some more playing time too if they're not getting that here in the NFL. And I know you talked about meritocracy, and kind of that's a myth oftentimes. Because it really, our systems advantage those that have a little bit more access, a little bit more privilege. And you kind of talked about how some of those Black players had to show up and work twice as hard. But maybe those alternatives are going to another league like you did. But could you share more about kind of your legacy of football? I know you mentioned your son, if you would like to talk more about that, and just kind of the importance of that legacy to your family.
Well, my oldest son, Eric, played in the league for 13 years. He was born when I had him. He was born when I didn't have him. He was born when I was in high school. But I was his father the whole time. He actually got to see me in my prime. He actually got to come where I was. I flew him wherever I was. He actually went to our training camp in Toronto. So he had experience about professional football before he even got there. And so he knew what he wanted, and I was there to help him. He went to the University of Texas. I wanted him to go to Notre Dame because of Notre Dame and, the education and things, but I wasn't going to be the decision maker for him. I was going to help him in his decision making. So on the day of National Signing Day, he was getting ready to sign with Notre Dame. His mom wanted him to go to Notre Dame too, but I called him right before that and I said, look, if you have any doubt about going to Notre Dame, don't sign. Because he was in the top 5 in the nation as far as athletes coming out of high school. And so I said, somebody will hold a scholarship for you. So he didn't sign. And then the next day, University of Texas called and asked, saw that he didn't sign. And I said, only thing I had to ask him was, are you still interested in my son playing? They said, yes. I said, well, you don't need to talk to me then. And I said, I called Eric. I said, come get on the phone. They flew up the next day. They talked, we talked. They left the scholarship. They said, the only thing though, if you need to sign it, we need to have a coach here to witness that you signed it. And we ended up at the University of Texas and All-American and football, won the long jump national championship twice. So it worked out well for him. And I think the experience that he saw me play the game and also some of the troubles I went through off the field molded him to be a better player, a longer player. And I would say right now, even a better parent because he saw the lack and he knew what not to do.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I bet as a father, it makes you proud to kind of see that legacy carried on and see that same athletic ability that you had in your son. So I'm sure that was beautiful to watch. And I love that you spoke to the importance of, learning from your parents' mistakes. That's how I've kind of looked at my life now. People only do the best they can do at the time with the resources that they have. And I find it important rather than to let those past traumas or experiences hold you back, to take a look at them and say, okay, I learned this, from this situation, and this is how I'm going to proceed in my daily life. And this is the type of parent that I want to be because I know what I experienced and I don't want to pass that down. So thank you for speaking to that. It's important for our community to continue to grow and, through personal accountability and also through cultivating good relationships. I did want to take it back a little bit, back to, talking about your experience in Canada. I just wanted to know, did you experience racism in Canada? And if so, were there any differences in racial tensions or how race was a factor in society in a different country?
No, I really didn't. I probably part of it was because of who I was and what I was doing, but I really didn't see it. I spoke to it earlier. Cultures lived in communities, and that community would embrace the cultures that they had. I like that very much about Canada. And even in the big city of Toronto, those things were still carried. Crime was really low at that time. A woman can walk down the street late at night and not have to worry. The RCMP they weren't no joke. They were not a joke. They took care of business. And so I really liked the safety, the cleanliness of the city. And I said the cultures, there were so many cultures, and a lot of these cultures came from different countries, but they were there like a big melting pot, but they were working together and trying to be the best that they could be and embracing one another's differences. And that's what I liked more than even on the team. There was, there were French speaking, there were non-French speaking, there were some American, but we still worked together as the best that we could do.
That is so interesting that you didn't experience discrimination in Canada, because I, do think the effects of white supremacy and racism are pervasive across the globe, but racism in America, it's very different. It's particular. And so I appreciate you elaborating on that and just sharing your experience, because I think, the U.S. can maybe take some lessons from places like Canada and cultivating community and building cultural competence. I think that's a big thing too. But that white supremacy is really embedded in many folks here that live in the U.S. because they're not aware of the tormented history of many marginalized communities. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, moving on to our next question. I wanted to ask, what advice do you have for aspiring professional athletes as they seek to reach their goals?
The number one, do not forsake your education because there's no guarantee that you're going to make it. You can be, I've seen, there was a Heisman Trophy winner that did not make it in the NFL. So there's no guarantee, but there's always a guarantee that if you educate yourself, you can use your mind for financial gain or prosperity, because this gonna last, your brain's gonna last a lot longer than your body. You know, when we're young, we think we can play forever. I thought I was gonna play forever. I got hurt in my off season at the Washington Redskins, or I'd have 2 Super Bowl rings on my finger. But education allowed me to keep moving forward. So what you don't or what you can't continue to accomplish athletically, you can always continue academically. And that is the one thing that we need to teach our young athletes, inspiring athletes to be professional. And I think it's out there more so now than it was when I was coming in. It was this, come in, you're playing, I'm going to play professional football. I had a teammate that was his goal, and he didn't make it, and someone lost his mind because he didn't get to play. Fortunately, I got to play. I didn't take academics as seriously as I could have or I should have. But looking back, I wish I had been more committed to that, because it's something that will last you a lifetime. You see some of these athletes that doing it on podcasts or they're doing analysis. They worked off the field to get themselves in position. I heard a story about a quarterback for the Denver Broncos. He took his bonus money and invested it. He didn't spend any of it. And he made that money work for him for the rest of his life. See, sometimes our culture, the Black culture, thinks I got to have all the bling. I got to have all the cars. And it's nice if you can do those things. But I think you need to set yourself up for the future, because one day you're not going to make that income. Going back to my lawyer, he invested stuff for me that at the time I thought, well, that's a lot of money. But now I'm comfortable. I'm not rich like these NFL players, but I'm comfortable. I can go to the store, I can buy clothes, I can buy a car, things that, and I can provide for my family. And that's what's important. Not that I have to keep blinging, which I never did anyway, but I think we have to drop the bling down and look at the longevity of what your money can do for you and your family. You know, I look at LeBron James, and he has so much money, his family's going to be taken care of for the rest of their lives. That's how each athlete should approach the game. Yes, I can make money, but let's make that money make money for me for the rest of my life, so I can help my family if they need help. I don't have to worry about, because you live this high life, and then all of a sudden that money's gone. That's the problem with some of the athletes. They still want to live the high life. They don't have the income to back it up. And that's where the problem comes.
That's such valuable advice. And we've spoken about financial literacy on this podcast before. And I think you made a great point about how many of those players and, you know, folks from our community will come upon large sums of money and are not really sure how to invest or have that even knowledge about where to grow your money or how to do it. And so I think it's so helpful for our listeners. That's a big part of our podcast is the mentorship. And so hearing from folks like you who have seen people make those mistakes and you're able to impart that knowledge now is great. And that's so great to hear that you also had advisors that were investing your money for you so that now you're able to sustain a lifestyle for yourself and you're not worried about having, you know, enough to live on. And so, yeah, thank you for that. And then also I was hoping you would be able to share more just about your experience transitioning from professional football to your time as the Dean of Education. I know you spoke about knowledge kind of being power and the way to liberation. But kind of what was that turning point for you, if you could take us back to where you kind of realized that you wanted to put more emphasis on your education or prioritize that?
Well, and I'm going to be open and honest. I went to school to play football. So when I went to Long Beach State, I did not get my degree. And then I was drafted and I played and I played and I played. Then I got paralyzed, like I said, in my off season at the Redskins, and that cut my career short. So at that time, I was 31, 32 years old. I was a lost individual. I had no secondary plan. That's why I said earlier, athletes need to have a secondary plan, which is a lot of times is education. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a teacher. You can be a broadcaster, a news person, whatever it is, but pursue those things. So in case that thing that you desire passes away, you still have something you can do. I used to work with a drug prevention program in Washington, D.C., and it was called Super Teams, Students United with Pros Encouraging Responsibility. And we would take them away for like a week and kind of remold them, reshape their mindset of how they approach life, how they approach academics and things of that nature. And we would take the teachers also and kind of retrain them how to get the students engaged in the classroom. And I was told then, this was in 83, 84, I was told then you could be a good teacher. I said, I don't want to be no teacher. I'm not being in no classroom. Where all these kids? No. And so some years later, I moved back to Seattle in 1990, and I was just looking for a job. So it was a private school, Zion Preparatory Academy here in Seattle. And I knew the principal, and I just needed a job. So I started working there, and within 2 years, I became a kindergarten teacher. And then about 5 years later, I became the reading specialist. And then I went back to school and got my doctorate in theology, and understood the importance of that. That really taught me, because doing those theses and those dissertations, oh, Lord have mercy. I didn't know how much work was involved in those things. But that takes a lot of work, a lot of commitment, and a lot of desire. But it gave me a better understanding of what education is and how important, how empowering it can be if you go through it. And then at Rise Up Academy, I met Dr. Stutz, who's the CEO. I met him through Zion Preparatory Academy. And 26 years ago, I used to train his teachers on the curriculum that we still are using to this day. And I retired. He called me to consult some 13 years ago. I'm still consulting 13 years into it, but not really. I'm actually the Dean of Instructions and empowering these children to be the best that they can be, even at 5, 6 years old. That our motto is, I can learn anything, and that's what we teach them, and that's what we show them. So I got a bigger and deeper experience on education and what it means, because children come in not knowing, not secure, and I like to make them leaving with their head up, knowing that they can and they will and they do.
That's so cool to hear that you found your passion outside of the sport, and also that you were able to prove to yourself that you are capable of doing something more. I think many people, like you were saying, kind of get that tunnel vision of wanting to just play in the NFL and that's all their identity is. And it's kind of this myopic view of the world, but education really opened up your possibilities. And now you're able to contribute to supporting positive youth development in your role as the Dean of Education at Rise Up Academy. And that's an accelerated early learning program for preschool, pre-K, kindergarten, and before and after school students. And the mission at Rise Up Academy is to eliminate the achievement gap by providing a high-quality, innovative academic experience that nurtures a child's enthusiasm for learning through education, the arts, and social impact initiatives, empowering them to thrive throughout their educational journey and beyond. Can you speak to your work here and what inspired you to take this role? I know you spoke about, finding your interest, not really wanting to be a teacher, but supporting children in a different way. So if you'd like to talk more about your current role, please feel free.
I wanna congratulate you on that speech you just gave, because man,
It was a long one. I was like, oh, this is a tongue twister here. I'm surprised I didn't have more baubles. So
I don't have to say anything else about Rise Up Academy.
yeah, we want to give a shout out to Rise Up.
Yeah. So I guess I've always been close to children. I used to babysit when I was a young teenager, 3 infants at one time. So I had the patience. But I teaching is coaching. I'm also associate pastor. It's another way of coaching. Uh, the classrooms are different, but the outcomes are the same. You want to empower people to be better, to do better. And if they know better, then they can always do better. So teaching is just like coaching to me, because I want to make that individual, let's use Brad. I want Brad to feel that whatever I ask him to do on the field or in the classroom, he can do it with no hesitation. And, you know, when they ask me a question, I said, well, what do you do first? So and so, what do I do next? So I said, well, see, you really didn't need me. You just have you got to have the confidence to use what you have and put it into practice so that you can be what you want to be. And that's what empowers me. When I see a child come in that can't read, and when he leaves my class, he can read, he can do math, then I know I've done my job. That gives me more enjoyment than sometimes even scoring a touchdown, because that is a touchdown. That's a touchdown that's going to last a lifetime. When I'm on the field and I score a touchdown, that's for the moment. And, you know, sometimes they go in history, but it's just for the moment. But if I can teach a child to be all that they can be and do all that they can do, that's going to last that child a lifetime. And that child has a chance now to have a leg up on the world, on society, and be successful, regardless of what they try to do to them or how they try to hold them back.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I remember when I came to visit Rise Up Academy, and I was honestly just blown away at these students. They were just so, proficient in their math, in their reading. It was just beyond anything that I had seen. I had no words. Like, it was just beautiful to see, and especially all the Black children and just how bright and intelligent they were. And also how you guys incorporated the arts, like, with them, playing music, and they knew all the notes to the music. And I was like, I'm 24 and I don't even know how to read music. And here are these little kids doing the mental math quicker than I can. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to step it up a little bit. But I wanted to know, and you could speak on that a little more. And does that bring you pride and joy, just, seeing these kids excel? I know you mentioned that before, but can you elaborate on that and how that makes you feel as someone who guides them?
Well, because when I first got into teaching, I just got into it because it was a job, right? But then I saw something on Como years ago when they were saying that by the age of 5, children should know all the mathematical concepts. Not that they know 9 times 9, what it is, but they know what multiplication is, what division is. They said they should know the best time to teach them foreign languages and music is before they're 5 years old. So many times in society, we take these young children and put them in a box. You can only color, stay in the line. I don't care if you stay in the line or not. I want to know, can you do math? I want to know, can you do addition, subtraction? Can you read? Those are the things that are going to, as you grow, you can stay in the lines. But as you get older, are you still going to have the ability to learn reading? By the 3rd grade is when, if you don't have the foundation of reading and math and academics, that's when you see children start going the other way. And there's research that by in the 3rd grade, they start building jail cells for those children who they know are not going to make it. So my job is, my mission, my assignment, I put in my assignment here, to make sure that they're, by the time they're 3rd grade, well, Actually, third grade to me is too late. They should be learning how to read when they're 3, 4, and 5 years old. They should be doing math when they're 3, 4, and 5 years old. They should know science when they're 3, 4, and 5 years old. Foreign languages, music, these things. Because the more they're exposed to these academic curriculums, the more they'll be secure when they get to school and have to be taught these things. I have a 5-year-old, you know him, Brad, Ivan. We got to get him into school. We can't send him to public school because if they put him in first grade, he's going to get mad because he's bored because he already knows this stuff. So we're trying to find a private school that would appease his appetite for education. We introduced him to an algebraic phrase the other day. He didn't get it. But I'll tell you this because I know him, because I've had him for such a long time. He wants to know that algebraically. He wants to know how to figure it out. That's the kind of student he is. And that's what we're trying to impart in these young children is that I want to learn what I want to learn. And even if I can't do it now, I'm going to learn how so I can do it. And that's what excites me, that I see children that want to learn, and I'm going to feed them as much as I possibly can, because sometimes in our society, we dummy down education when it comes to our young children. Early learning education is key to our workforce, to our job force, to whatever we're going to do in society. If we teach these children at a young age how to be all that they can be academically, they will be. Because they're going to take care of me one day, and you, Brad, one day, and we want them to be the best at what they can do. So, and that's how we're going to that's how we're going to rebuild America, by building these young children, lay this foundation so they can grow.
Wow, thank you so much for that. It's great to hear. And again, I was just blown away. And thank you. I want to personally thank you for that work you're doing, because it's so important. Especially when we talk about public schools, how a lot of schools for minority students are underfunded, not funded enough due to the way our tax system works and, the formulas for funding those schools. And so I appreciate the work you're doing, because I know Ivan and all kids alike are going to go on to be the future scientists, mathematicians, anything they want to be, have all the tools to succeed, and through getting those early on. And it was just great to see and hear you talk about. With that being said, we can move on to our next question. You were inducted into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame in 2018 and the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame in 2020. What legacy do you hope to leave behind, and what do you hope to be remembered for after such an accomplished career?
And I was a little guy that came from, I would say, middle class, if not a little less than middle class, that I still achieved success in spite of my circumstances. Your circumstances don't dictate your outcome in life. There's been a lot of athletes that come from maybe trauma, abuse, or whatever, that have still been successful. So your circumstances that are in your life right now does not dictate that you will not be successful. Because I know every child that comes through, I've had homeless children, and I had couch surfing children that come to school, haven't eaten, and things of that nature. But I still try to empower them with love, with confidence, and that they can be something. And not that they can be something, that they are something. And they are a diamond in the rough, and we just got to get the coal off of them so the diamond can shine.
Thank you so much. This has been such an uplifting and encouraging conversation. And I also want to thank you for the work you're doing with Rise Up. I think you spoke to a really important point about, that one child that you see so much potential in, and he's so bright. And if he was in a certain environment that wasn't cultivating that or didn't recognize that, it's actually a disservice to that child. And they may not be able to reach their full potential. And so that's just great that there is a resource for those kids to have people like you that are willing to figure out what that next step is for them so that they can be the very best person as they continue to grow. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then moving forward, I can't believe this conversation has gone so quickly. And again, Brad and I are so grateful to have your time. We know you're very busy. And just to hear all the wisdom that you shared, I know that it will resonate with our audience. But we ask all of our guests this question, and it's really just about Blackness and what that means to you, how that's influenced you, and just guided your life and kind of informed how you navigate the world. And so our last question is, what does Blackness mean to you?
Well, for a long time as a youngster, it didn't mean very much to me at all. I'm a dark skinned black person, and growing up at that time, dark skin wasn't very much light. So I didn't have, excuse me, I didn't have very much confidence in myself as being a dark skinned black person, and I didn't think in the classroom I was very walled in. I didn't have a lot of friends, but when it put me on the field, that was a different story because this came off because we all had my team in Little League was green and black, so we all had green and black on, so we all looked the same. But what Blackness means to me now that we are kings and queens, that's where we came from. That's where we came from, and that's what we have to keep telling our children. That's who they are, because society is going to try to make them feel that they are less than, and they are not less than. And I know this Blackness means this to me in academic realm. I'm not saying we're better. I'm not saying we're worse, but we as a Black culture learn differently. Because you know this, if a child can learn a rap song after listening to it once or twice, don't tell me that child can't remember stuff. Don't tell me that child can't speak. So when I teach, Blackness means I got to teach to our culture. So I teach rhythmatically. We do the ABCs, but I don't call them the ABCs. I call them the wall cards. And I learned this from Marva Collins before she went on. And it's a certain rhythmatic kind of learning that the children enjoy. And they learn it because it's something that goes back to our culture, to our African nature. And we are somebody, and we are going to be somebody, but we got to embrace it. There's so many children out here hopeless and don't know who they are, don't know where they come from, and that's the problem. They got to know who they are. They got to know who they come from, the kings and queens. And once that is empowered in them and imparted in their life and to their spirit, then I think you will see a change. But it's going to take more people like you and myself to get out there and roll up our sleeves and help our culture, because the other cultures are not going to help us. Not that way. We got to help ourselves. They say charity starts at home. Well, we're home, so let's start with the charity at home and start feeding our children that they are somebody and there will be somebody, and you'll see a change. It may not happen this year, next year, but it's going to take some consistent work with longevity and long suffering, and it will come to pass.
Thank you so much. That was so profound. And I really just appreciate that you spoke to how we need to know our history and understand where we came from. And, often Blackness has been framed in kind of this inferior light in the US, and we don't understand where we come from, and we don't have that pride. And so, like you said, it's all up to us within our community to continue to instill that pride, and us being here and embodying our Blackness in its entirety in these spaces that have not always welcomed it is the most powerful way that we can show up and be proud. So thank you so much, Terry. I do want to give you any space to offer any last words with us, or impart any advice to our listeners if you have any.
Well, speaking on what you just spoke to, not knowing where we come from, I was unfortunate. I didn't know any of my grandparents. They were all gone by the time I was born. And I believe this, that you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you come from. So it's important that the elders in our culture, the grandmas, the grandpas, the dads, the uncles, keep passing that history down So I know who I am and I know where I come from. And even talk about the struggles, the slave days and things, but that doesn't mean you have to be there. But it give you a better idea where you can go because they paved the way for you and I. Now we can pave a way for the next generations to come. And it's going to take some work and it's not going to happen overnight. But if we get enough people that buy in to who we are and what we can be, they can't hold us back. We can only get better. And that's all we're trying to do is get better.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. And like you said, we're so much more than some of those unfortunate, experiences that we've had as a culture, and that it's now our responsibility to take the torch and continue to pave the way to excellence. So thank you again, Terry. I think that's all that we have for you. Brad, I'll give you a chance if you had any last words to comment on this absolutely transformative episode. It's been great.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Brad. And it's, I was a little hesitant because I'm not a big guy. I'm not a big social guy, actually.
Yeah. Oh, really? Wow, you did fantastic. I would have never known.
Well, put it this way. I mean, I can preach, I can teach. That's different than just hanging out at parties and stuff like that. That's not me. That's not me.
Right.
This is important. So this is something that I will come out of my comfort zone to experience and to express my wisdom and knowledge on the subject.
Thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate it. I know that you are a man of faith. And so when you talked about the importance of, passing down that legacy and knowing who you were, it made me think of this verse that stuck out to me in Job chapter 8. It says, just ask the previous generation, pay attention to the experience of our ancestors. For we were born, but yesterday and know nothing. Our days on earth are as fleeting as a shadow, but those who came before us will teach you. They will teach you the wisdom of the old. And so I appreciate you touching on that and just the importance of passing down that history and that knowledge, because like you said, we are who we are because of who came before us, and we are going to continue to pass down the torch to those who come after us.
Yes.
So thank you so much just for sharing everything. This was such a great conversation, and the wisdom that you shared is just invaluable.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. Glad to have been a part of this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Terry. Well, we're wishing you a great Monday, and I'm so excited to share this episode. You're playing such a vital role in all of the children that you're supporting in their educational journeys. And we're excited to shout out Rise Up Academy too. So thank you again, and we hope to talk soon with you. Have a good day.
Have a blessed day.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We are so grateful for your support, and thank you for listening to Identity Unboxed.
Authenticity is your guide to cast an impact on the world that you will be proud of. Signing off with pride, Tiana
And Brad.
Thank you so much.